Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd give a bit of a 5 cents opinion of Forbes' top 38 metal bands of all time. Why 38? I don't know. Maybe 38's all the metal bands that they could think of. It's a strange number. I don't really get it. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the list and we'll see if we agree, if we disagree. Maybe somebody they've missed out, somebody they should have put higher up, lower down, I don't know. It's something to talk about. So, anyway, we'll jump right in. At number 38, they have got Carcass. Hey. Now, I think Carcass is a cool band to have on the list. And I think they're a cool band to acknowledge, actually, in such a list. They're highly influential and they've stood the test of time. And I think that's, if you're going to do one of these lists, hopefully it's not conducted on just outright album sales. Surely that's a factor because it helps determine overall global reach. I get that. But I think it has to mostly be, in terms of like having a lasting impression, a lasting effect and influence on the bands that kind of come after and the direction of music that comes after. And I think Carcass have definitely left a long-lasting impression. So yeah, in terms of like the sort of more death metal, melodic death metal, if you will, there are a lot of bands, I think, that take their core influence from bands like Carcass and consequently linked to that Arch Enemy and so on. Probably Arch Enemy more. You'd have to actually ask, because we're going to get to this, and you'll see Arch Enemy are not on the list, and you could possibly argue why they should be. I prefer personally that Carcass is on the list. I think that's now the better band of the two, but there was a time where you might not have necessarily argued that, but I think Arch Enemy have lost a little credibility, with some of the choices that they've made. Maybe gone after the big ticket, so to speak, and I don't think the writing is as strong as it once was. I think that's fair to say. I'm sure that'll piss somebody off in the comments, but I don't really care. Lyrically especially is something where I just don't think they're as strong as they used to be. At number 37, they've got At the Gates. I gotta be honest, I don't listen to At the Gates. I never really did. But, I'm constantly reading and watching interviews and they're referenced quite often. I think it's fair enough to probably have them on this list and, not too high up, but there's a lot of bands that credit them with being a guiding influence. So, yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I've listened to some At the Gates and, it's decent music. I never really found myself getting into them, if that makes sense. Now this one I thought was interesting because I'd have had these guys higher up, but at number 36 they've got Exodus. I mean, I know people talk about the big four as being Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax, but for me Exodus is right nipping at the heels of that, because all you gotta do is listen to like early Exodus and listen to Ride the Lightning and you're like, oh, there's a real direct, clear connection. And I think that's you can really hear Kirk's influence come into Metallica from Ride the Lightning onwards, if that makes sense. Plus there's a certain sort of production style that was going on at the time that's kind of shared between the two bands to some degree. But yeah, I think Exodus, first off, how long they've been around, and they've actually, in more recent years, their form has actually been pretty consistently good, So yeah, I don't know. I'm glad they're on the list, but I kind of feel like they should have been higher. Number 35, Behemoth, which I also thought was another interesting choice, and you'll see why I say that as we go down the list. They're a good band. They're a good band. are they as influential as some others from the genre? And when I say the genre, I mean loosely from the genre. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. As far as like standout Norwegian black metal, maybe it's because they're still really viable today, but their overall overarching influence, I'm not sure. I think there could be other bands with further reach, but maybe when it comes to more of a stock black metal sound, what I mean by that is like rather than like a crossover sound. Yeah, maybe. It might be fair enough. Let me know what you think in the comments. 34, Napalm Death. Now these guys should definitely be on the list. Everybody has taken a leaf out of the book in some way, if they're even remotely from the death metal fraternity. And even if they're not, a lot of guys definitely into Napalm Death. So yeah, definitely on the list. Possibly could have been higher. I don't know who these guys are. Don't know how you even pronounce them. Kius? Caius? Huh? Forgive me, I'm old. I'm over the hill. Anyway, that's them. Kyuss. Never heard of them. Which makes me wonder why they should be on the list. But you guys can tell me in the comments. Tell me if that's a good pick or not. At number 32, Dream Theater. Now, definitely should be on the list. Definitely should be higher. Because if anyone says progressive metal, Dream Theater is the first band that comes to mind. I don't care what you say. They're the first band that comes to mind. Now, I actually preferred Dream Theater's material when it was a little bit more prog and a little bit less metal. What I mean by that, I mean everything pre-Train of Thought, and up to and including Train of Thought. But like, yeah, after Train of Thought, I think because Train of Thought did quite well, after that, they really doubled down on the tuned down kind of 7 and 8 string metal approach. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's still all great, cool material for the most part. Really enjoyed pretty much everything, and I own every single record. But there's just some magic about some of the earlier records, which are a little less like that, and maybe highlight a little bit more of their prog influences, like Rush, like Yes, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and stuff like that. You know, they're a little bit more playful, maybe, with the music. I'm hoping this next record that comes out with Mike Portnoy rejoining the band, I'm hoping there's a bit of that playfulness return to the band. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, certainly deserve to be on the list, and I think it would place them higher, certainly inside the top 20. Let's see. Number 31, Nightwish. Now, I think it's fair to have Nightwish in there. I think that's about the right sort of placing. Highly influential band, especially I think for a lot of women in metal. This is probably one of the leading figures as far as like sort of kind of inspirational role models for vocals, but not the only one, because there's loads of women now that do really aggressive vocals obviously as well. And then that's another case for why maybe Arch Enemy should be on the list. From memory, I had a glance at this list. I could be wrong. Maybe I'll scroll up and find out we're on the list, but I'm pretty sure they're not. But yeah, you know, like Angela Gossow and Alyssa White-Glitz should probably, you know, whether I like them or not, the influence that they've had is measurable. So that band, through its different eras, has a very, very wide cast net of influence. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. Anyway, Nightwish at 31, I think fair enough, and I think if you're into that kind of particular vibe in metal, power metal, but like, you know, I guess more operatic in some ways, and yeah, again, it is a factor. We like to pretend it's not, like, it doesn't matter if it's a female voice or a male voice. Yeah, it does. It does to some people, you know. Like, I get a very different vibe listening to, say, Nightwish, for example, which is not really my cup of tea, but I don't mind them. They're great players, great band. They write pretty good music, but they don't hold a fucking candle to Iron Maiden. So, you know, but it does make a difference, you know, like as to my response to the music. Listen to a vocalist like Bruce Dickinson. There is just much more like power and drive and heroism within the voice. And you might say that's something like with Nightwish, it's more like a sort of a beauty and a frailty and there's more feminine qualities to it. That's absolutely fair and real. It's not. I don't think it's wrong to distinguish between those, and I don't think it's prejudiced. It's just a fact of life. Men and women's voices sound different, and so they highlight different tonal characteristics. I don't think anyone would argue with that. So if you think I'm sexist for that, fuck off. Anyway, number 30, King Diamond. Definitely should be on the list. 30, probably just about okay. Scraping in there okay. Again, really wide influence. But I would definitely have to say that probably bands that formed post 90s, I want to say, maybe, you know, from the noughties onwards, probably wouldn't be influenced so much by King Diamond. It would all be like kind of 90s era and pre-90s for the most part. I mean, I'm generalizing, but yeah. 29, Danzig. I'm not sure about this one. I never really got into anything that they did. Just wasn't my cup of tea, you know, but always in metal magazines when I was growing up, always, people always talking about them. Yeah, probably fair enough to be on the list. Is it the right place? I don't know. I am going to ask you for your opinion, because I never listened to them, so I don't think it's really fair for me to comment. But they were always present in the press, in the music press, in some way, shape or form. So yeah, probably is fair to have them on the list, if I had to guess. Number 28, Converge. Never heard of Converge. Somebody tell me about Converge. What are they? Who are they? What do they do? But I kind of feel like this list, if it's a top 38, I kind of feel like if you've been around listening to metal for shit, I mean, I'm 40 years old, right? So, and I've been listening since I was like, I guess 10. So call it 30 years of listening, 3 decades of listening to metal. If there's a band I haven't heard of by this point, even in passing, even if somebody going, have you listened to fill in blank, then they shouldn't be on this list. Sorry, it might sound harsh, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this band is fucking amazing. But I'm just, you know, I'm like, there's a lot of bands that we've all heard of that are undeniably classic bands, and everyone's heard of them. You know, whether they like them or not. Like I said, setting aside personal feelings about you know, like personal takes on style and whether or not you like the person's voice or whatever. Just in terms of their overall, the shadow that they cast on the whole genre. Yeah, it's just one of those things. You think you would have heard of them. I haven't heard of them. But maybe you have, and I'm missing something. And that's possible. You know, nobody said I'm right about everything, least of all me. You know, I'm here to learn as well. And lots of times people in the comments introduce me to stuff, and I go and check it out, listen to it, and oftentimes it's really cool, and it's a great journey of discovery. And that's kind of why I have this channel. Obviously, I write and record music. And if on the off chance that you go and you explore around the rest of my channel and you happen upon my music, that's great. But otherwise, I'm just here as if we're sat, you know, at the fucking local club or something like that, and we're just talking shit. Or maybe in the local guitar store and we're just talking shit. That's what this is. That's what this channel is. It's not about me being fucking right or something, right? Number 27, Cannibal Corpse. Not my cup of tea, to be sure. I don't really like Cookie Monster metal, personally, but that doesn't matter. Cannibal Corpse have been around for fucking ages, and everybody who's anybody in death metal, Cannibal Corpse, man, like, yeah, they definitely should be on the list. They definitely should be on the list. Maybe inside the top 25. You know, they may be slightly low on the list at 27. It's hard to say, because as we get down to like the top 20, it's going to be hard to like fucking sort the wheat from the chaff. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone is pretty good by that point at what they do. Okay, so number 26, Anthrax. That sounds a bit low for Anthrax, considering that they are officially in the Big Four. Whether you agree with that personally or not, if they're not in the Big Four, they're just outside the Big Four. And the Big Four is called the Big Four for a fucking reason, you know, because they are the ones with the big reach, with a few exceptions, you know, which would be like some of their predecessors from the new wave of British heavy metal, which we'll get to. But Anthrax should definitely be on the list, 100%. They've endured a lot. They've had some ups and downs. Different people like different eras and different singers. But overall, they've kept a positive trajectory, and they continue to do so. And arguably, they're bigger now than they ever were. So, yeah, maybe should be higher. Miss Sugar at 25. I think these guys should definitely be higher than 25. I don't personally listen to them, but I can't go past a metalhead that doesn't rate these guys in their like top 5, and with good reason. They do what they do exceptionally well, and I have a lot of respect for them, even though it's not my personal taste in music. I can happily sit and listen to them, no problem. But I haven't been compelled to go out and buy their records and buy tickets to the shows. But if they were playing and I was, at a festival and none of the bands I'd come to see were playing, and they were playing, I would definitely go and check them out, because they're a good band. I have seen them a couple of times live. Number 24, Machine Head. I think this is probably about fair. Although Machine Head has obviously gone through a lot of iterations now, and really it's just Rob Flynn, isn't it, left from the original lineup. Although they did have the Burn Myers reunion sort of tour, I guess you could call it that, reunion. Anyway, they had I think, was it the 20th anniversary, something like that. But they had the original lineup with Chris Kontos and Logan Mader, and although they didn't have the original bass player, but what's his name? Oh God, I can't think of it now. Adam something. His name escapes me. But anyway, I think it's fair to have Machine Head on the list. I think they're kind of lucky to be on the list, because if you remember that time through, before through the Ashes of Empires, following like the Burning Red, and what was the album that came after that? Supercharger, I want to say. Major dip in form, major dip in sales. Band almost winked out of existence, in their own words, playing to 10 drunks in a bar. Yeah, lucky escape. And a lot of it has to be put down to the tenacity of Rob Flynn. Some people like him, some people hate him, but one thing he has showed is he's got the grit and determination to just keep going no matter what fucking happens. And sometimes that doesn't earn him any brownie points. People, I think you have to be a bit kind of ruthless to do what he does. But he is the heart and soul of Machine Head, and say what you will about them, he's still here, and they're actually putting out pretty decent music of late, I haven't bought everything that they've made. I like the first 2 records first and foremost. I like Through the Ashes of Empire quite a lot. I thought The Blackening was okay. I have it somewhere, but it's not my fave. I liked, what's the one with Killers and Kings on it? Oh, is that record actually called Killers and Kings? Bloodstone and Diamonds, I want to say. I like that record a lot. I'm terrible with names. But yeah, overall, I think, aside from their little blip, where they kind of lost their way, which a lot of bands did around that time, obviously looking at the new metal scene and things like that, a lot of bands sort of compromise their trajectories, thinking, oh, we better try something fresh in the hopes that we'll survive this. And actually, it turns out that if they just held their ground and did what they believed in with conviction, their audience would have stayed. So, and you'd just weather the storm, so to speak. Anyway, moving on. 23, Lamb of God. Again, I think this is fair. 23. Should they be inside the top 20? Maybe, but it's only just outside the top 20. So it's a little less egregious, but definitely Lamb of God definitely should be on the list. And definitely somewhere in and around the top 20 for sure. Again, massive, massive, massive influence on a lot of people. Not just in terms of writing, but in terms of the actual playing. I mean, like, God, how many people in Gent would like cite the rhythm section of this band as being the primary kind of core influence? I think a lot. I think a whole hell of a lot. I'm not into Gent, and I'm not into this band, but they're inescapable. Their influence and their so the legend of the band. You know what I mean? Like that kind of attitude, their style, the way they carry themselves, the way they dress themselves, all that kind of thing. You'll run into a lot of people that look a lot like these guys in a lot of clubs. And it's not a bad thing at all. I don't dislike them at all. 22, Mastodon. I think I would have had Lamb of God higher than Mastodon personally. I think Mastodon are really cool. Out of the three, Meshuggah, Lamb of God, and Mastodon are probably the ones that when I saw them live, I was like, oh, this is different. I quite dig this jam. I still didn't go out and like buy all the records and stuff, but I just thought they're kind of a quirky breath of fresh air when I first heard them. That was back in, I want to say 2006 or something like that. Download maybe? My memory's a bit hazy on that. Someone could correct me if they were there or not, but I'm pretty sure they were there. I think so. But yeah, I just think they're super creative with, what they put together. And they've definitely had that long career, that longevity, and that long-lasting influence. 21, Sepultura. This is a weird one for me because their early catalogue is so influential. It's super influential, super classic material. And for me, that would put them inside the top 20 for sure. But post Cavalera Brothers, I'm not sure. Some of the allure breaks down. And some of the legend goes away. And so then it becomes Cavalera Conspiracy, and now it becomes Cavalera. And I think the core heart and soul of what made Sepultura goes wherever the brothers go. And that is currently not Sepultura. Now Sepultura is set to retire. But I don't want to be completely one-sided in this, because I do think that they've done some really good work post Cavalera Brothers leaving. It hasn't all been a case where it's like, that's like shoddy or something like that. No, there's been a good standard of music, but there is something different about it. There's something that's irreplaceable when you take Max and Igor out of the equation. That's quite a lot. Just Max is a lot on its own. Max and Igor together, there's a big, like 60% of what made Sepultura, at least, maybe more. Removing that is it has consequences. I think that's fair to say. Like, whether you think they're positive or negative on a personal level, it has consequences and you can't escape that. That being said, they've continued to pump out some good material. Maybe the first couple of albums where Derek Green came on, not the best representation. Maybe if you like the tribal stuff a lot and you were into like Soulfly and stuff like that, then yeah, maybe you enjoyed that. I enjoyed some of the stuff on them, but I preferred when they started to go a little bit back towards the heavier thrash elements. But that being said, I can't say that I followed them that closely or religiously. I bought a couple of the records, if that makes sense, and I listened to them on occasion, and it's pretty good. But I listen to Arise and Chaos AD and stuff like that a lot more regularly. Type O Negative at number 20. I'm not so sure about in the top 20. These guys were always in magazines and stuff like that growing up. But if I had to say, if I was walking around and just talking to people now, and there was like Type O Negative, I think a lot of people would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I just don't think that they have that all-casting shadow over musicians and fans alike over what you see today. like that long-lasting ripple effect through the industry. I don't really agree with this. Should they be on the list? Probably. You know, in this like top 38 for whatever fucking odd reason it's 38. They should probably be on the list. But I'm not sure that inside the top 20 is right for them. I always found them boring as sin. I gotta be honest. They were never my cup of tea. Motorhead, on the other hand, definitely on the list. Definitely inside the top 20. Possibly inside the top 15. I just think too long and wider influence. You know, if you can walk into a metal club or pub and not hear Motorhead while you're there, I think that's pretty surprising. There's something wrong with that place if you don't hear something like Ace of Spades or something at least. Anyway, I think Motorhead definitely belongs on that list. Death, certainly, definitely, 100%. These guys are just too like, wrote the manual, wrote the textbook. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many people that like their blueprints are like 90% death, you know. Amazing players as well. And again, it's not even like my cup of tea. It's just one of those things, you know, like, you can't escape them, and so you end up giving it a go and giving it a listen and checking out the interviews with them and stuff like that, and you're like, damn, these guys are good. Dio's definitely on the list. I would say my friend Jim would be like, oh, he should definitely be top 10. But I'm not so sure. I mean, it was never my cup of tea. It was maybe a 50-50 split thing, so maybe I should meet in the middle and instead of 17 go for 15. But like, I'm in the minority. I feel like I'm in the minority for not listening to Dio. 16, Megadeth. Now I have a personal bias towards this. I would have Megadeth much higher than this. I'd have Megadeth inside the top 10. So I have serious gripe with this. Especially this lineup. Marty Friedman, Dave Mustaine, Nick Menza, David Ellefson. For me, that was the golden ticket, that was. But for Risk, which is still a good rock record, I maintain. Terrible metal record, but a good rock record. But aside from Risk, I wouldn't say that there's like records that are like terribly disappointing from them. So they had like that one blip. They had other records that weren't fast, like the thrash records, but still good metal records, if that makes sense. I think they maintain their form really well, but I think Dave Mustaine, ever since Risk, and ever since he was like, do you know, I'll never do that again, ever since then, that band has just gone like basically up and up and up in terms of like standards, professionalism, musicianship, speed, ferocity, production. Like, Megadeth are ridiculously good these days. At 15, Gojira. I said that like a Japanese person. Gojira. Gojira is like, I don't know, I'm not sure I would have them quite as high as 15 on the list. I'd probably have them just nipping in the top 20 if it was up to me. They're a great band. I haven't heard a lot of their stuff, but whatever I've heard of, like, I'm like, that's really creative. That's really fucking, you know, a little bit like left field, but kind of catchy, well produced, good musicianship, all of that stuff. I feel like though that they're more niche than this list gives them credit for. A little bit more niche, because they're more brutal as well than this list might give it credit for. And so their influence would be a little bit less, you know, their influence wouldn't be quite as wide, I feel. I could be wrong on that. But then, of course, they played the stupid Olympics, which I think was a bloody farce. Not them playing it. That was cool. I have no problem with that. And some people were like, oh, it's Satanistic, maybe because of the music and because of the rest of the silly shit they did. I don't have a problem with that music or any of that stuff, but I do have a problem with the whole like fucking DEI, forced representation, all that bullshit. You don't need to shove it down people's throats. But having a band like Gojira play, and the whole thing of like I don't know, the fucking French Revolution and like decapitations and all that kind of stuff. I thought from a metalhead perspective, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know. But the rest of it, I thought was just kind of silly. But it was cool to see them, you know, good for them, basically, good for them. They got to play on a stage, on a scale and size that metal bands usually don't get to. So, good for them. Wholeheartedly deserve it. Fantastic players, fantastic band, stayed around a long time now, and it's very hard to criticize them. At number 14, Korn. This is probably fair. Whether you like them, whether you hate them, I like some of the stuff that they've done over the years, and I don't really care for most of the stuff that they've done. But there's one or two records, or one or two songs on one or two records where I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I can only take them in limited doses, I think. But I respect what they've done. They've stayed around a lot longer than I think most of us probably would have imagined, who were around before they were a thing. And yeah, fair play to them, you know, and definitely have a wide shadow cast through the industry. Number 13, Rammstein. Again, I think this is probably fair because, well, for a band that sings in German, they're awfully catchy, right? They've had a lot of pretty decent hits, but you wouldn't say that they've like kind of neutered down or compromised or sold out. It's shock rock, really, but a bit more towards metal than towards rock. But here's the secret. The secret is the stage shows, the scale of it, the pyro, all that kind of stuff. And the fact is, I mean, they've even weathered the storm of like recent controversies and things like that. The machine is that big that they can absorb those kinds of impacts and that kind of thing. Now, I have a video where I talk about that. I'll link that about here if you want to jump off and go watch that. What I think about the controversies and that kind of thing. But yeah, ultimately they've dealt with it, and they're able to, as an organization, just roll on through basically and keep delivering the goods. So yeah, you have to give a certain amount of respect for being able to do that, and you have to have reached a certain size, a certain critical mass to be able to do that. Number 12, Deftones. I don't agree with this. I don't think it should be quite this high. Look, I don't have anything against Deftones. I just don't think they have the kind of wide-ranging, wide-spanning influence to be top 12 on a list like this. I'm not sure they should even be top 20, frankly. Controversial take. I don't think they're a bad band or anything like that, per se. I think they're just a little bit more dated to their time, is all. They were a very big influence in that time, but I don't think their reach has extended that far past that time. That's my opinion, though, and this is just my opinions. These guys, on the other hand, everyone still talks about them and would love to see them play together, and they're constantly talking to various people in this band independently, hoping that one day they will reunite. System of a Down at number 11. I think that is definitely a fair place to have them. For a band that actually only just did kind of reasonably short stint of records, they kind of hit it quickly and hit it hard, and then, I don't know, fell out or something. I don't know the whole ins and outs of the story. I know some bits and pieces, but considering these guys haven't set foot on a stage together in years and years and years, and the fact that, you can't open Facebook, really, if you follow any metal publications, you can't really open Facebook on any given week and not come across something where somebody's talking to somebody from this band, prodding them, going, when are you going to do something? So there's definitely a demand for it. There's definitely a wide influence. People still thirst for it. Alright, we're getting to the top 10 here. So, Avenged Sevenfold. Probably a fair take to have them inside the top 10. Again, it was never really my cup of tea, but I have a lot of respect for them and what they do and how they do it. Fantastic musicianship. Obviously, Yeah, they're kind of like the Metallica and Megadeth of their generation. I think that's fair enough. Number 9, Tool. Maybe not the Metallica of their generation, because no one's really the Metallica of their generation, are they? Tool, I think, is definitely fair to have inside the top 10. Massive wide cast influence. They've been around forever now, and there's no signs that really that their kind of influence is waning. I tend to not really think of them as out and out metal, but to me they're kind of set a little bit more towards alternative in some ways, except very progressive. I can take them in doses, but I find that the records can be kind of samey. As incredibly well crafted as they are, full respect, I'm not knocking them. It's just a case of how much I can take of that all day long kind of thing. I find that they have certain tendencies and they can kind of repeat them, and the tempos are like very samey and stuff like that. So yeah, I have a limited capacity for number 8, Slayer. Could be maybe higher, but maybe not much. Maybe like 2 places higher, something like that. But definitely inside the top 10. This is probably fair. 8 is probably fair, because there's other people you got to squeeze in there. Again, far-ranging influence. You could have argued like, but hey, they've retired, but then they came back and they played a show together, and it sounds like it was pretty fucking good. I don't think it'll be the last one either. And I think, from what I can tell, Tom coming back to do some more shows, the impetus for that seems to be, from what I can tell, is just a case of when he feels like playing. Which is kind of the right reason to do it. It's like, I want to go and play some shows. I want to go rock out with some people. Let's go play one. Rather than like, let's milk this whole tour and like charge exorbitant prices for tickets and all that shit. At least that's what I've heard so far. If you've heard different, let me know. Number 7, Slipknot. I would have had Slayer ahead of Slipknot. Sorry, but I would. I think they're more influential. Slayer are more influential than Slipknot. Slipknot are massive, far-reaching, far-selling outfit. I don't like everything they've done. I like some things. I like subliminal verses. I liked... what was that other record? The Great Chapter, is it called? The one after the bass player died? I think that's right. Correct me in the comments. Like I said, terrible with names. There's a few things I've done over the years where I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty slick. And, I've enjoyed that. I like subliminal verses because it's quite raw. But I'd like it when they have less of the original R&B kind of thing. I don't like the first record so much. The second record's a bit better. Third record I really like. That's kind of where I'm at with them. I think it broadly defines how I listen to them. But I like some of the other things they've done since then. They've got very, very good with producing their records as well. So full credit. They do deserve to be on the list. Definitely. But I would definitely have Slayer higher. Okay, who else have we got? Number 6, Ozzy Osbourne. I think that's fair. With Randy Rhoads, bless him, soaring with the Guitar Angels at the moment. I think that's definitely fair. I mean, like, I never listened to a lot of Ozzy Osbourne's solo work. I just preferred Sabbath. I thought it was darker in tone. But what I did listen to of Ozzy's was Randy. It was sort of required learning for anyone coming up learning guitar in the 90s. If you don't listen to Randy Rhoads, then people thought you should go to an asylum. So yeah, but it definitely has that far-ranging influence. Continues today, and he's only just really retired, hasn't he? So that influence will continue for some time. Number 5, Judas Priest. Definitely should be in the top 5. And there's maybe a case to have had them higher. I never listened to Judas Priest so much. I mean, obviously I've heard them, but I don't own any of the material. Like, I haven't bought their records or anything like that. But they're still a fantastic band. They're just not my kind of flavour. but definitely deserve to be in the top 5, because it's like if you're like my group of friends, then you're either into Priest or you're into Maiden, and sometimes it's a bit like Megadeth and Metallica. There's very few people who are into both. There are crossovers, but they're like, it's just one of those things. Pantera, top 4. I think that's definitely fair. Reunion thing aside, the influence of this band never wavered, it never waned, and the influence of Dime and Vinny has never waned. I would say after the likes of Metallica and probably Megadeth, Iron Maiden and Priest, I would say these guys are... Oh, and Sabbath, of course. These guys cast the widest shadow in terms of, like, especially the effect on players, and therefore what music gets created next. I just think, they're inescapable, their influence. Even if you didn't like them, you couldn't go anywhere. You can't go to any metal club or pub and not hear Walk, not hear fucking Hostile, not hear Domination, not hear Cemetery Gates, not hear This Love, not hear 13 Steps. The list goes on. So I think that's fair. At number 3, Iron Maiden. Again, I think this is fair. All you got to do is look at the size of the shows, the consistency of the size of their shows, the amount of records, the enthusiasm at the shows, the reviews for the records, and the band. Look at the band themselves. They're still really, really happy doing what they're doing. And they're really smart about it as well. It's probably one of the best run bands in the world, flying themselves around and everything. Yeah, long may it continue, vocalist overcoming cancer, drummer overcoming a stroke. Yeah, Iron Maiden in top 3. Definitely agree with that. Number 2, Black Sabbath. I would definitely agree with this as well, because they are the godfathers. Whether they see themselves as metal or not, which they typically don't, I definitely do agree and believe that without their fundamental underlying influence, just so many things just wouldn't have happened the way they did. So yeah, I think so. I think they're just so foundational to the formula that you can't really put them any lower. Number 1, Metallica. The amazing thing about this, and this is correct, this is fair, okay, just because of, again, the size of the net, the inescapability of the net of influence is just staggering. But I think this particular picture is interesting to talk about, right? Because this is Cliff in this picture, not Jason, not Rob. Okay, so this is the crux of the matter. This band is so lucky. They're so lucky. The strength of their back catalogue is so overwhelming that no matter what they do, they always float to the top. Now we all know that a lot of that is because of the Black Album and the reach and the scope of that. So you could argue that maybe Jason should have been in that picture. But actually what's happened is exactly what a lot of people said that record did. That record opened a gateway where a lot of people listened to that record, and then they went back and they listened to the back catalogue, and that introduced them to other bands that were heavier than the Black Album was, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is like faster, more aggressive, more openly metal, little less edge towards hard rock, let's say. And I really rate the Black Album. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's incredibly overplayed and that kind of thing. But I rate it. I rate Master of Puppets higher in some ways, and I rate the Black Album higher in some ways. But I think they're very fortunate to have had not one but 2 masterpieces that are very different. But there's no getting around the fact that there's a lot of people that came in because they heard a record from metal that sounded good. What I mean by that is it sounds like Queen made it. You know what I mean? Like, it's where every note is like so fucking well crafted that there's nobody who can turn around and go, that's shit. Unless they're a bit ignorant, right? And sorry, if you're that person, it's just true, right? It's not a bad record, objectively speaking. You can't call it a bad record. It's probably one of the most well-crafted records ever produced by anybody, anytime, anywhere, and it won't be topped because people don't make records like that anymore. They don't take 6 weeks to get fucking drum sound anymore. It's like, get in, get it done, fucking get it out, you know? Won't let you fucking go again and again and again on like a single guitar solo for a week or whatever, you know? So, yeah, I don't think we'll ever see the likes of it again. But, like I said, what it did was it brought people in and it gave them a shift in perspective to be able to appreciate a load of metal records that couldn't afford the production and the time and that sort of stuff. It was like an icebreaker. And a lot of metal bands were able to walk through that and make their business of being a band a viable business from that point, rather than just an exercise in getting fucking drunk and stoned. And that has blossomed into the wide-scoping, multi-genred, sub-genred, multifaceted metal culture that we see today. And for that, Metallica will always deserve the #1 spot. I don't think that'll ever change. And that's where we're going to leave it. Let me know what you think in the comments about the list, where you disagree, where you agree, who's missing. I think Fear Factory should have been on that list somewhere, and they weren't. Not particularly high, but on the list, just as an example. So yeah, let me know of any examples that you have. I think Dimmu Borgir should have been on the list as far as representing black metal, even symphonic black metal. Emperor probably should have been on the list. They weren't. So yeah, there's a couple of my takes. Exactly as to how high, probably not that high because it's more niche, but they should have been on the list because I think they just had cast a wider net, in my opinion. Shit, as much as it pains me to admit it, fucking Cradle of Filth should be on this list, and Blind Guardian should probably be on this list. In fact, they probably should have made this list a top 40 list, which is given them a couple of extra slots to fucking play with, and they'd be able to squeeze a couple more acts on there. Why make it 38? Yeah, I still don't get that. Venom should have been on that list too. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you later. Bye.